Welcome back to the PR Hotline, your first call for PR fixes. This season, myself, Maya, and Grace are diving even deeper into the real issues people in PR, social media, and marketing face every day. From client expecting overnight results to burnout, creative blocks, and everything in between. If you've ever sat there wondering, is it just me? It's not. These are the conversations we all need but rarely have. Each week, we're joined by a guest to talk through a real problem from the industry, breaking it down honestly, sharing what's worked for us, what hasn't, and how you can approach it differently. Then, we'll dig into a campaign they've brought along, exploring the idea behind it, how it landed, and the lessons you can take into your own work. So, whether you're listening on your commute, on a coffee break, or hiding from your inbox, we're so glad you're here. Let's get into season 2 of the PR Hotline.
So I'm Saskia. I am the Senior Associate Director of Digital PR and Content, which is a very long job title, at EssenceMediacom North. So I head up our digital PR and then content strategy function. So I've been in PR for coming up to 6 years, and then about 3.5 years ago joined EssenceMediacom North to kind of set up their digital PR function. Came from more of like a traditional PR agency and then moved to EssenceMediacom North, which is like a big media agency. So quite a unique experience sort of setting up digital PR in that landscape. And then outside of work, but kind of within, I suppose, the industry, I'm also head of marketing at Bloom North. So Bloom North is a not-for-profit organisation for women in communications, and it's all about sort of uplifting and empowering women and up-levelling them, men too, but predominantly women within sort of the communications and media industry.
Okay, fab. So we are going to talk today about a problem that we've had submitted in. So I'll just talk through the problem, and then we can kind of get into talking about your experience, Saskia, and like kind of how we would offer advice to this person. So they've said, I want to grow in my PR career and eventually step into leadership, but I'm struggling to find my voice and confidence, especially in rooms full of more senior people. At the same time, I keep hearing that I need to act like a leader before I become one, but does that mean doing someone else's job without the title, support, or pay? And how do I step up without burning out or being taken advantage of? So kind of going on to the first, I guess, point of this is that kind of like the self-doubt of belonging within a group with other people. We've previously kind of touched upon this in other podcasts about PR is quite a competitive industry. We're very KPI driven. Unfortunately, it does end up meaning that we are kind of pitted against each other slightly sometimes within teams. So why do you think it is, or what is your opinion on why you think it is so commonly to kind of feel unsure with yourself within a PR team?
I think it depends on what the context is. I think if you're looking at it from the sense of feeling unsure about yourself within a PR team, if you're at the start of your industry or maybe a bit early on in your career even, I think it's one of those industries that you can do the best work in the world, but the outcome doesn't always reflect the work that you put in. You know, you have to kind of put it out to the world and earn that coverage. And I think that if that's not working for whatever reason, you know, within the media industry or journalists, or it's silly season, it's summer holidays, I think that it's very easy within PR to have kind of like small setbacks and knockbacks. And even if you really believe in a story or the work that you're doing, it doesn't always kind of correlate to results. Likewise, you could literally pick up on a reactive opportunity one morning, it takes 10 minutes, and then you get 100 pieces of coverage. And it's like the correlation and causation isn't always there. So I think in general, and this is something that is a journey I go on with new people in the industry in terms of kind of rewiring your brain of what success looks like and where you get validation from. So I think that that's really common, especially at the start of your career in PR. But I also think in terms of maybe not feeling sure about yourself in a PR team or any team, I think ultimately it comes down to like exposure and experience. So it is very normal to feel a bit uncomfortable if you're in a room with senior people, or if you're presenting to a client for the first time, or delivering a campaign for the first time. If it's a new experience, it's going to be somewhat uncomfortable. Like, you know, very unrelated, I went to a Barron's class for the first time a few weeks ago, and I was so unbelievably nervous. And I was like, I had to tell myself, it's fine, you're nervous, because this is the first time you've done it. I think the danger is potentially when you start to really dwell or like punish yourself for feeling that way. So if you're feeling that discomfort or sense of, you know, worry or what's going to happen, or am I going to do well? But then you really start to dwell on it and you think, because I'm having these feelings, I mustn't be equipped, or I'm not ready to do this. I think that's kind of where the danger or the imposter syndrome can start to come in. So I think it's a really normal thing to feel, because as well in PR, often it's quite a young industry as well. So sometimes, when I was on certain calls for the first time or speaking to clients, and it's like I was, a 21-year-old grad, and it's a 5-year-old businessman who's like run, loads of businesses. And it's like, oh my God, what am I? Why do I have, the right to tell him these things? So I think there's a lot of different elements, but I think it is completely normal and completely valid. It's just about not letting that kind of, prevent you from continuing and trying new things within it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with the balance class example, because Thea took me to my first reformer class the other week. The instructor had to come and hold my hand because she thought I was going to fall off the bench,
But you did it.
I did it, but
Yeah.
I completely, in the end, I was very proud of myself. So yeah, you've talked a lot there about the advice that you give to new people entering the industry or entering your teams. But looking more at yourself specifically, when you moved into leadership, what kind of helped you to find your voice? Is there an example or a moment where something really clicked or shifted for you and you felt like, yes, I'm here, I feel comfortable now?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. I think that when you're stepping into more of a leadership role, you can sometimes have in your head, what does a leader look like? And, let's be honest, in a lot of industries, but our industries, sometimes leaders are white middle-aged men, which is okay, but that is not necessarily representative of, the people who are doing the work at a more junior level, and just what our society looks like. So I think often when you're kind of stepping into that role, I know how I felt was, okay, I'm younger, I'm northern, maybe, quite a bouncy personality. That's not necessarily what these leaders around me always look like or how they always conduct themselves. But actually, it was when I really started to lean into that I felt comfortable, because I think authenticity is so important. And I think a real turning moment or turning point for me, both in terms of getting digital PR a seat at the table where I am now, and also myself a seat at the table, was kind of in one of the first like big cross-channel meetings I had, which was with quite senior people and other channels. And I love PR, so I was, very enthusiastically talking about PR. And sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, I've got a bit carried away with myself here, and I'm speaking too quickly. But actually, off the back of that, people were excited about digital PR, but also the feedback I was getting was, you had so much energy, like, it was infectious and whatnot. And I think that when I started to lean into the fact that, I am really passionate, I do speak quickly, I try and slow down, but I do speak quickly, I care a lot, I am quite a personable person, it just felt a lot more authentic and natural. And I wasn't trying to put on this, I'm going to be a leader today, or I'm going to approach this situation, as a leader. It was just leaning into what felt sort of natural and comfortable. And there's a really great phrase or sort of concept for this, which is your zone of genius, which is something that Sarah Fleming, who was a previous co-president of Bloom, actually introduced me to. And it's all about, I'll find the definition because I AI overviewed, but basically it's about finding what you're passionate about. So it's the intersection of your talents, passion and strength. It's where you feel most alive, engaged and productive. It's difficult to sometimes find that, but if you can really find those moments where actually work, you're turning up, you're getting energy, you feel really impassioned and driven within what you're doing, and you're getting that feedback as well, the chances are that's kind of a good area for you to be in. If you can really lean into that, you're going to naturally kind of find your voice and, I suppose, leadership within that as well.
I've never heard of that before. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's also something that I saw from a manager's perspective, where it's kind of like a quadrant, and it was, I can't remember exactly, but it's like what you're great at and love, what you're good at and enjoy, what you're good at you don't enjoy, what you're not good at and you don't enjoy. And I think a really common thing from a management perspective is it's like, right, let's focus on what you're not good at and get, okay to it. For me, for example, spreadsheets and processes. It's never going to be what I'm amazing at. You know, I can do it, but I don't love it. I don't get energy off it. So rather than really focusing on those weaknesses and improving those, obviously you have to have certain skills in a different role, but rather than really fixating on that, it's about what you're great at and love, or what you're good at and you really enjoy, and becoming an expert in that. And I think if you can take that time to really reflect on that within your career, or speak to like your line manager or a mentor about that, that's really, I think, an empowering moment in your career as well.
I found what you said really interesting, because it is very much about like constantly kind of get told like to improve on your weaknesses, but basically like finding your niche within management. I think just within careers as well, being able to find your niche is a really important thing to do.
Yeah.
But what I want to kind of move on to, I guess, a bit is about like kind of like that transition into leadership. And it's something that when I first started in PR, literally like drilled into me that you have to do the job before you can get the kind of promotion and things like that. So like that quote that I said at the beginning is something that I've heard multiple times from multiple people. And it's not necessarily something that I agree with. I agree with some aspects of it. I agree that you should be showing the passion, like we've previously talked about. You should be showing your passion for your career. But what is your opinion on that? And do you think it's something that's helpful for people, or is there any other ways that you would kind of go about that, or talk to junior people about those kind of promotions?
I think that's a bit of a scapegoat for promotion systems that exist within businesses, where often, you know, the pipeline to promotion can be 6 months to a year, like depending on what your level is. And I think that's, thinking cynically, maybe an easy way for people, line managers, to get around it, or more senior people to kind of get around it. I don't love it. I wouldn't say I completely disagree with it. And I also think sort of it depends what level you're at, right? And like, if you are quite senior, then sort of fair enough. Okay, you might need to act like a leader before you get a big step up or take on significant leadership or managerial responsibilities. But I'm not obsessed with it, because I think it's kind of code for do the job above you, or, you know, do 150% of a role. But I think that
Just to interject on that, I will say that it's probably something that I've heard more from toxic kind of rather than an agency that I'd see on LinkedIn that's really pushing for the growth of their execs or junior people. So I would say there's definitely a specific type of agency and, I guess, leader that encourages that kind of behavior compared to.
I would say it's the kind of leader who's not necessarily looking to get the best from their employee. They don't want to grow their employee to be worthy of that promotion, a role that needs filling, and they don't want to spend the budget that it requires. It's two very, very different mindsets to, I want a senior PR exec that I don't currently have. Do I force someone who has no training into that role with no pay? Or do I work with my junior to get them to where they need to be? And I think that's, yeah, you're right. They're two very different kinds of agencies.
My previous agency, I worked as their head of PR for 6 to 8 months before they allowed me to say that that was my actual title. Managing a whole team at the 23, a lot of support and helping to transition into that. And I was not being paid for that role either. So I think it does happen a lot in agencies, unfortunately. And I definitely don't think it should be something that is done a lot, because it's got a lot of stress.
Yeah, and do you know what, actually, because we've never been on a call for it, but I feel like I've been in my ether for a while, because I remember, I think we're similar age, and when you'd gone to said agency, I'd also not, or just after, in similar timings, came to, well, what was MediaCom, and it was a sort of, I suppose, similar situation. You were in a similar boat in terms of being young. So I was 23 and like, okay, now you're leading a function, and it was like, okay, and in a way, when I look back, I actually think having some of my, not, I wouldn't say naiveness, but that kind of just genuine, like, okay, let's do it, and wide-eyed, sort of bushy-tailed, helped, and energy as well. I feel like I had more energy than what I had now. But yeah, I completely hear what you're saying, and I think it's a bit of a potential trap of that at like a leader, where it does mean that, you know, often younger, quite ambitious and driven and dedicated people can potentially be taken advantage of. Fortunately, hasn't necessarily been my experience, but I think that it's like, oh, well, prove you can do the job above you. And it's like, why? That's not, I don't love it as a messaging. But in terms of, I think a piece of advice that I would give, I think in terms of people who want to demonstrate that leadership potential or leadership skills without having to literally do the job above them, is to not always think up, but kind of think across in terms of, is there a project that you can identify and take on? So it could be that it's an existing project, or it could be something new that you can take on and you can develop and nurture and kind of own. So an example within PR, or like specifically digital PR, it could be, let's say, okay, social, the lines between social and SEO are really blurring. So maybe it's as a digital PR manager, you want to develop how your team works with influencers or UGC, or kind of build that out as a function. Or maybe you've spotted that there's a bit of a weakness in terms of like your measurement proposition and you want to offer a solution to that. I think having sort of a smaller project that you can own and report on and say, look, this is something I identified, and this is the journey that I've taken it on, or this is where it's at, and maybe getting like senior sponsors within your workplace to kind of get on board with it and back you up on that. I think that's a great way to, yes, it is somewhat taking on more work, but it might be that it's still within your role, but you can almost package it up as this really great like development and innovation. And similar to what I was already saying in terms of that zone of genius, if you can find something that you're really interested in, then developing that is going to give you energy as well, really rewarding for you. So it kind of is going to help, develop your career and help you enjoy work more as well.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I also completely agree with that. That was something that I did at Rise at 7 when I first started there. I had a skill that nobody else in the agency had in terms of I could speak French. They were getting a lot of global kind of clients, and it's something that I worked on. That was part of my personal development plan to like be more senior, I guess. It was to introduce the kind of French PR and try French literature PR and see how we could kind of do it. So definitely think that is perfect advice in terms of find your skill, find something that's not being used, I guess, within the agency.
I think within that though, I think we all have to be like the drivers of our own career, right? But also hold your line manager to account. So what I want from the people I manage is for them to come to me. We might work together on finding what they enjoy and what they want to develop or potentially become more specialist in. But I want them to hold me to account and say, look, I want to work on this, or this is something I want to develop and it's a weakness within our team or whatever it might be, or our product proposition. But I currently don't have capacity, or I need your support in setting up this meeting with this person, whatever it might be. I think actually, carving out the time in your diary so that you have the time to focus on that. And if that's not possible because of, resource or your overcapacity, like speaking to the people around you and speaking to your line manager. And I just think if you don't ask, you don't get. So hopefully your line manager will love that and facilitate that for you. And if they don't, then I think still do it anyway. Just kind of, potentially move some things around, or, lean on peers or lean on other senior people within the company that can support you on that as well.
That's all excellent advice. I think it's quite interesting for me because I've not really been part of leadership within an agency. My leadership experiences are in very different industries. So kind of hearing from both of you, knowing that you had similar kind of career trajectories is very cool. That's something that comes up all the time, how to communicate that value. One of your kind of big things, Saskia, is working on making PR more visible across teams. So do you have any advice about how someone in PR could secure that seat at the table, how they can be taken more seriously, specifically within performance-driven and brand-focused environments?
Mm-hmm. So I think to this is kind of two sections. So the first is the skills that are required within PR, and then the second is the impact of PR. So in terms of the skills required, I think PRs often overlook how much you have to do to be good at PR and how many skills there actually are within a PR role. I think especially for me, because my previous agency was like a small just PR boutique agency, so I just assumed it was the norm and that all channels had so many disciplines within it. You've got to be creative and strategic and be able to handle data, and if you're in digital PR, then there's the SEO side of it, there's relationship building with third parties and influencers and things like that, also the creativity and ideation side of it. I think what was really key for me was demonstrating those skills, because they actually were skills that didn't necessarily sit within like a performance channel. People don't necessarily do writing or creativity and ideation. It's very sort of, I don't know, activation focused, and it's about budgets and reviewing data. So demonstrating those skills, and one of the key things for PR that I think is really critical, especially when you're kind of, raising your profile, is to shout out about your work and your results. So the journey to get there, because so much work goes into that upfront section. We looked at this audience data, we were tracking these social queries or these search queries, we then developed this campaign, or we worked with this expert, whatever it might be. Really start talking about that process and celebrating that process, as well as the kind of, and we got this coverage, really helps demonstrate sort of the skills involved. And what I found, again, from being exposed to people and being in meetings, but also really talking up that kind of process, was that people within kind of my company were reaching out to me like, oh, could we borrow you for this session? We've got like a brand team coming in, but we're talking about it from a performance perspective. Like, can you help bridge the gap? Or our clients are working with a PR agency. Could you just like give us a perspective as a PR professional? So I think really showcasing those skills helps, and also being aware of them. Because I think when you're so busy in PR, you're just like, oh, it's nothing to just, come up with a story that gets this coverage and blah, blah, blah. But it's actually really impressive. And also sitting in an SEO department really gave me a confidence boost, because when it was like, creative writing or ideation, and they'd all be like, how have you done that? And it's like, you have to have skills to come up with these ideas. So yeah, I think really, and getting an outside perspective on that as well is really helpful. So yeah, I think the first part would be the skills. And then the second, in terms of the value of PR. So again, a real step change for me was when I started to tie PR or digital PR into other channels. So, and it's a big conversation right now because of AI. I think PR is having a bit of a celebration, and it's like, oh, it's not just, magazines and whatnot. However, this is something we've really been leaning into for a while now, because, sitting in an agency where there's so many channels, and I'm quite curious. So it's like, I want to understand these channels better, but also I feel like the work we're doing might be impacting these. So a few examples is, if you've got, had a really great PR campaign and loads of coverage, have a look if PPC brand demand has increased, and like your brand terms on PPC have increased, so then your CPA is going down. Or if you're tying into organic social, is it so some of our clients will share like content we do on their socials, or like the link to the landing page. Has it got a better click-through rate? Has it driven more engagements than the channel average? Affiliates, we work with our affiliates team a lot in terms of, asking, obviously journalists use affiliate links. We have an affiliate team, so we'll say, can you track how many sales that actually drove? So really bringing in those other channels, because I think that when you can start to show almost like the halo effect that digital PR and PR causes, because it does, and we see it a lot, and I think it just makes it that little bit more tangible. And when you are in a performance environment, or your client is like a performance marketer, they don't always care about like, the brand messaging or the brand positioning. They do want to see that hard data. So if they're not necessarily bought into PR, show them the sort of wider value. And, I couldn't have been able to prove all those points without, again, speaking to people within my company who are the experts on those things and sort of asking those questions. So it's kind of half and half. It's like, the more you reach out to people to talk about PR, the more they can validate the work or impact it's having, and then it sort of is a bit of a cycle as well.
I'm going to butt in and just say that you split your answer into two parts, Saskia, and I really liked the comment you made in the first part, that was basically saying we need to stop having conversations about securing a seat at the table in terms of forcing our way in and making a place for ourselves. What you did is showed your worth to the point where people started inviting you there, and they weren't inviting you because they felt like you should be there. It was, they wanted you. You had value that they wanted to include, and they wanted you involved in those kind of more senior meetings. And I think it's really good messaging for people who are looking to transition into leadership and make that move, that it's not about, pushing your way in necessarily, more about becoming the person that they need, becoming the person who has the value needed for those meetings and for those conversations. So I thought that was a really good way of looking at it that I maybe don't see very often. I see a lot more about networking and making the right friends and less about, you know what, just being so damn good that you have to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I love that that's been called out, because I do think that that's something like we're seeing. I've been where I am now for 3.5 years, and it was really sort of maybe the way our company works is you've got, like, the client services team, so the business directors and client partners who are, I suppose, like gatekeepers to different accounts. And really, we started to get, when I started off, it was going out to clients and existing clients, and going to existing SEO clients first, and then wider clients within the agency, and trying to pitch for, let's do digital PR. And over the last sort of probably 6 months to a year, it's almost been a reverse, where we've built, and it's myself, but it's the team as well, have shown up consistently, shown their value. And now we're getting, oh, I want you to come work on this client, or I think you'd be good for this client. And that's really nice, first of all, because then it's a confidence boost and makes people feel really good. But it does just show the value of, I think, I am a very ambitious person, and I often am thinking about, okay, what's next and what does my role look like? But ultimately, that can only happen if you're showing up and being consistent in your day to day as well. So yeah, I think that's a great call out. And another point to this, which isn't specific to PR, it's any industry, but definitely what helped me in that journey was amazing sort of sponsors, I suppose, within my agency, primarily amazing women who, whether I worked with them or reached out to them, or, someone introduced me to them in a natural, and, it was not in a networking capacity, it was like in the coffee queue, or, because we worked together on a client. The sort of people who bring up your name when you're not in a room, I think that's so powerful. And to have people who trusted voices within a workplace advocating for you is massive. And I think we can do that at any level, whatever level we are, advocating for other people. And it's for me, so important now that that's happened to me and will continue to happen to me, to do the same. I think, really building up your personal brand in the sense of it's your reputation and your value, so that those conversations are happening, or you are being, mentioned in rooms, is a lot more powerful, I think, than just, here's a LinkedIn post about why I'm so amazing. It's like, okay, great.
Have you found that doing the work with Bloom has influenced your career in any way? Obviously having that kind of helping other people. Is there anything about that you think has helped your career or influenced your career, I guess?
I think so. I think that, so through Bloom, I have a mentor, and I am a mentor, and I've done that for a few years now. So I would urge everyone to have a mentor outside of their work, ideally, just someone you can speak to, get a different perspective off. I think that's, so powerful. So definitely having, tangible advice and guidance from a mentor. But I think it has, in terms of feeling a sense of community, being able to go to, we run a lot of panels and events. So we did a panel about Zone of Genius. So hearing about those things and getting that tangible guidance from, people who are in various different careers and thriving. But I do think it's more of a sense of how it's impacted my career is having access in an organic and authentic way to those really incredible, primarily women who also have experienced it. I think when you're experiencing everything for the first time, or not even the first time, but I suppose, as a leader, I'm still at the start of that journey, really. And I think to get perspectives from other people who they're 20 years into leading a department, that is so valuable, because sometimes you just need someone to listen, but also provide you perspective, give you some guidance, offer reassurance. So I think it has, in the sense of, helped my career of having those influences. And also when I have been in difficult moments in my career, or feeling, a bit bogged down by things, I have people I can reach out to and be like, please, can we get a coffee, or can we go to the wellbeing room, and can you just listen to me for 10 minutes? So yeah, I think it definitely has. But a lot of it is, again, it's in that more, I suppose, sponsorship and just general kind of support way, than necessarily, when I took on the head of marketing role, then, opportunities opened up for me. It's more about that actual community behind me.
Some of the best advice I've had from people I consider mentors, who've got kind of lots of experience, like you talk about their 20 plus years experience, is they've seen change in a way that I haven't. I've not been in the industry for that long. So I've had problems that I've solved, and I could offer people expertise around those particular problems. But they've seen changes within the industry, within the way we do things. I mean, if they've been in the industry 20, 30 years, they've seen the kind of evolution of the internet on our phones and shopping on our phones and the introduction of apps and that kind of thing, and how that affects digital marketing. And so they've seen some really serious change. And as we're kind of coming into this environment now where we're having to adapt to Gen AI and things like that, I've found it really valuable to get advice from people who it's new for them too, but large change isn't new for them. So that's been great for me.
100% that. I think that's the thing is, you know, from a change perspective, and also like if your business is going through a change as well, if that's the first time you've experienced, I mean, I worked during COVID, so that was kind of an outlier because no one knew what was going on. But, you know, if your business is merging or there's redundancies or whatever it might be, can be a really unsettling time, even if you're not directly affected. And I think, yeah, having people who have seen things like that before and can just offer their, you know, perspective and reassurance is really, really meaningful, because it happens. It's just when it's happening for the first time. And if you are in more of a leadership position, you're often in that difficult role of receiving information that you've not influenced, but then having to relay that to your team. And that can be really challenging as well.
What are 3 practical things that you would give to anybody right now that is searching for a way to get that promotion, a way to feel more confident within their teams to make that leap? What are 3 big kind of bits of advice that you would give?
In terms of advice, I think be active in your career. Don't be passive. And if you want a promotion, hold people to account, follow up on it, nag your line manager or whoever's facilitating that. I think often people can be quite passive in their career because they don't feel empowered to, you know, say this is what I want for my role, or this is kind of, you know, the progression or the pay rise that I want. So really take it on as a personal responsibility, and take the time as well to think about, I suppose, that zone of genius and that, you know, what do you really enjoy? And yet in the short term, it might be that you want a promotion for the job that you've been doing, or, you know, kind of a small pay rise, but also think long term in terms of what do you think you want to grow into, and kind of what brings you energy, and what are you, listen to the feedback you're getting. You know, if there's a certain part of your job that you consistently get praise on, then listen to that and kind of think about how that can, you know, develop into long-term career shifts. I'd also say, in terms of that sponsorship and mentorship piece, reach out to someone within your business that you admire as a leader, or, you know, whose career you admire. Even if you don't know them, it is quite scary and, you know, it can be difficult, especially in the era of Teams, but use that to your advantage. You know, it might just be dropping them a Teams message or Slack or whatever and just saying, you know, introing yourself if you need to, but also just saying, I'd love to have a coffee because of XYZ, or, you know, I'd really love to pick your brains about something I'm working on, you know, and just start that intro. And it might be awkward for like 2 minutes, but then I'm sure, you know, if I received a message from someone like, can we have a coffee because I want to pick your brains about something, I would be really kind of privileged and feel privileged that they'd ask me. So reach out to someone in your company that you admire. And then also self-promotion to the right people. So try to understand your, I suppose, business structure, even if you're an exec. You know, yes, there's your line manager, but who ultimately is making a lot of the decisions, or who do you also need to influence, and who do you also need to be in front of? Self-promotion can as well be, it might be easier to frame it in a wanting to share the amazing work me and the team have been doing, but, you know, really outline some of the great wins you've been having. Maybe you have taken on a project and developed it, you know, write that up into a formal kind of email outlining what you've achieved. Send it to your line manager, but also if you can, maybe CC in their boss or CC in someone else relevant within the department, because it's really important that your, I suppose, reputation isn't just limited to your line manager, because, you know, ideally they're feeding that up within the company as well, or across the company as well. But I think it's really important to, again, be active and have your own voice when you're talking about those things. So yeah, I'd say be active and really think about what you enjoy and what you want from a role. Reach out to someone within your company that you don't directly work with, but you admire. and then do that self-promo piece, not just kind of to your immediate team, but the people around that team as well that can influence your progression.
Perfect. Fabulous. I'm so sorry. I keep like frowning as you talk. The sun is right in my eyes. I promise it's not. Fab. Well, thank you so much, Saskia, for the amazing advice. There's a lot of stuff that I've learned within this. I will go away and look at more into, what was it, the
The
genius?
zone of genius.
Yeah.
I've made a note so I can look into it as well.
Fab. So we'll move on to something slightly more creative, and we're going to be looking into a campaign. So the campaign that we have chosen, obviously at the current time of filming, is very much festival season. I have the worst burn on my forehead at Glastonbury.
Wondered if you were going to bring that up.
I don't think it's that
You
bad.
can literally see a line.
Oh, right. Okay, now I can see the.
What did they used to, was it like Scandi fringe?
Yeah.
Did they used to dye that bit blonde? Just say it's that. Just say it's a Scandi fringe.
But yeah, so we're obviously very much into the festival season at the moment, and Aldi have recently, literally, I think it was just before I went off for Glastonbury, released stick-on nails that were 3D. Do you see this?
Yeah, right. So they were stick-on. Okay.
So they'd worked with a Instagram creator, Sophie Parkinson, who used Aldi's classics. So from their local packed butter knockoff, their Colin Castella knockoff, baked beans knockoff, to create these 3D nails that looked really fun and funky. They also, on top of the nails, so I was a bit unsure of this at the start, because I was a bit like, why nails? Why these certain products? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't really see the correlation at the time. But they've also accompanied this with a bit of a survey kind of thing, where they've looked at what festival goers usually rely on Aldi for this kind of essential season. And they found that things like a self-inflating mat, camping cookware, other things, basically. They accompanied this with some data to include within it. And apparently, you can actually get your hands on them. I thought it was a fake campaign. So you can enter by emailing festivalnails@aldi.co.uk with your full name and preferred design by 26th of June for a shot at Festival Nail Glory. I think that was everything.
I think my favorite part of the campaign is that it was data driven and it was insight driven. And that particular piece of data was that 39% of festival enthusiasts consider a festival manicure as essential as bringing a tent.
Okay, right. That makes more sense now, kind of.
Which is just insane to me. If we're going to really cut it down the middle and say festival goers, surely it's gender-wise roughly 50-50. It's not going to be largely one or the other. That would assume that the majority of women consider their manicure to be just as essential as the tent. Now, I do consider myself a little bit of a girly girl, and even I would rank the tent marginally higher than the nails, I would say. But no, I thought it was a really cool campaign that Aldi, or rather Aldi's PR team, took advantage of a really cool piece of data and did something really creative with it, instead of just outreaching that stat by itself. Because to be honest, that stat by itself probably would have got picked up by the usual, the types, kind of your Facebook headline type article. But to actually take that further and hire someone to put 300 hours of work into creating a product, I thought that was a really inventive campaign.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the intersect of my interests in terms of baked beans and getting my nails done is I feel like that's like a Venn diagram, me in the middle. So I'm like, for me personally, love this. And I think I'm kind of in two minds, because I do really love this. I love the creative. I think the actual work itself is incredible. At first, I felt a little bit like, what the relevancy of the nails, I'm struggling with Aldi in the sense of, obviously, festival nails is a massive trend, and that's a great stat to back it up. Is that the most relevant space for Aldi? If we also know, it's like, I get it because they've got a young audience and a lot of young shoppers at Aldi, which maybe, is an overlooked demographic, and young people, nails. Okay, I understand the process and I love the output in terms of the work itself, but I'm not sure exactly what else Aldi did, but I would also kind of want to build on this as maybe having different elements of this campaign in terms of that, Gen Z festival Aldi. I was thinking the airport tray trend, you could almost have like a inside a lot of people now use those old fashioned shopping trolleys to take the festival out. It's like inside my shopping trolley, it's all the Aldi products, or pack with me kind of influencer or creator content. I have a little bit more of that, the relevancy of Aldi products at a festival and leaning into that. So I do love it. I just feel like there's a slight missing piece for me in terms of the relevancy of the actual Aldi products and how they show up at festivals.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That I felt like I felt like it was interesting because, and I think it's relevant to their brand in terms of they're a very out there kind of brand in terms of the things that they've previously done for PR. So I think it's not like it's new that they've done these weird and wacky kind of campaigns. But I do just think it doesn't fit as well as I would have hoped it would have done. If you'd just shown me a picture of the nails, there's no way I would have associated that with a festival.
That's exactly it. It's like the festival, because I do get the festival nails are a trend, and I know all my friends going to festivals, they are mindful of, it just feels like maybe they were trying to jump on a few different moments at once, a few different, nails. We do a lot of work in Pinterest trends and Google, obviously nails are massive. But yeah, I just feel like there was a way to lean into that festival food, for PR, a little bit trickier, but maybe in terms of, having people make pretend to make gourmet meals, or kind of taking the mick a bit of what people eat at festivals. I just think, the nails, as incredible as the actual output is and the work is, I do think the nails could just exist without it being tied to festival. It could just be Aldi nails. The festival feels a bit like the missing piece for me.
Yeah, definitely. I love that idea that you said about because there's the airport tray trend, now there's the coffee cup tray trend. They could have started their own trend with what's inside my festival, because the amount of people that I saw absolutely struggling across the campsite with their little what are they called, trolley things. I think that would have been such a good idea.
And also, just on that, I feel like I was getting served and I didn't go with so much Glastonbury content from people who'd been before. And it's here's my tips. There's actually kind of expert PR angle. There's tips you could get in there in terms of how to food, or what food to actually bring, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, they may have done stuff like that as well as this, but I think that's where I would kind of lean into more.
I think it was a great idea, absolutely amazing creative idea, but there was other steps or other things that they could have done with it that would have made it even stronger, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe the consensus across the board there. So thank you so much, Saskia, for coming on and talking about this. I know that a lot of people will come away and find a lot of valuable information, especially those who are wanting to kind of take that step into promotion or getting a bit more confidence within their teams as well. So thank you so much.